Hallo allemaal, welkom bij een nieuwe video van Zebra Inspiratie. Fijn dat je weer kijkt. En ik ben heel blij en heel trots dat ze naast me zit. Eindelijk kan ik wel zeggen, want het ging eerst een keer een beetje fout met de tijd. Monica Smit uit Melbourne, Australië. Monica die is eigenlijk bekend in Australië omdat in augustus begon zeg maar de onrust in Australië. En een paar dagen later hoorde ik dat ze was gearresteerd. En ze heeft toch een aantal weken in de gevangenis daar gezeten en was daarmee eigenlijk Australisch eerste politieke gevangene. En ik heb haar gevolgd. Ik heb haar gekeken wat ze aan het doen was. En als vrijheidsstrijder was ik eigenlijk wel heel erg onder de indruk van haar verhaal. En daarom ben ik vandaag heel erg blij dat ze bij mij online is in een interview. Om eens te horen hoe het gaat met haar en wat haar plannen zijn in Australië met haar partij Reignite Democracy Australia. Hello, Monica.
Hello, and thank you so much for having me. I just want to let your audience know straight away that I'm half Dutch and my dad migrated to Australia when he was about 8 years old. So that's where I get my blonde hair from. It's natural Dutch blonde hair. And my Oma is one of my biggest inspirations. She's passed away now, of course, but I believe that she speaks to me from heaven all the time. So I just wanted to let your audience know that straight away.
Well, it's good to know that you have some Dutch blood in you and that you're a freedom fighter, like we are also in the Netherlands. Thank you, Monica. I told my viewers that I know you because you've been arrested for what you did. Can you explain to us a bit more what happened?
I sure can. So it's kind of like if you were to encourage your friend to park in a no parking area and your friend got a parking ticket, that's pretty much what I've been charged with, because basically they say that I have incited people to break COVID restrictions. Now, the punishment for breaking COVID restrictions is only a fine, but somehow the Australian government have found a way through the criminal system to basically criminalise incitement in this manner. So it's obviously ridiculous and we're fighting it. But I've just allegedly tried to, promote people to break COVID restrictions. So that's what I was charged with. And the method and why they do this is because they then get the opportunity to put bail conditions on people like me.
Yeah.
And in those bail conditions, it's really all about silencing them and diminishing their reach and their audience. So the bail conditions were so draconian, just tyrannical. They wanted to basically erase my entire website. I had 7 staff at the time. I now have 10. All those people would have lost their job. I was the vice president of a political party at the time. So I literally would not have been able to do my job as an opposition to the government because they were actually going to stop my freedom of speech. I was not going to be able to speak out against the COVID restrictions, let alone incite people to break them. So the conditions were, I also just on top of that had my own curfew from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. every day until my trial, which could be 2 years away. And in summer, it stays light till 9 p.m. at night. So I would have had to stay at home regardless of COVID restrictions during summer in the evenings for 2 years. So I didn't sign them. I went to prison for 22 days in solitary confinement and I got those bail conditions removed. So now I can still speak. And the irony is that the whole reason they did this was to silence me, and it's had the absolute opposite effect, because probably I wouldn't be here talking to you and talking to Holland had I not been put in prison for 22 days. So although I don't recommend it, it did have an effect on the world. And, God gave me that opportunity to make that stand. And now my voice and reach and ability to make influence change has become greater. So the joke is on them really in that scenario.
Yeah. Well, what's going on at the moment in Australia? What are the highlights that's going on at the moment? We had the Novak story. What else is going on?
I mean, the Novak situation is quite interesting because he got kicked out of the country because they were worried that his presence would encourage my community or the people like me, and I think it's going to have the opposite effect, because I think he will go home and spend his hard-earned money on suing the government and making them look like even bigger fools. So I think it's going to backfire on them, but it really shows the state in which Australia is in, because they're not even hiding the fact that his visa was fine and his exemption was legitimate. They actually are not hiding that they got rid of him because of his anti-vax sentiment, apparently. So it's actually good for the world to see that. There were 850,000 people watching the live stream, basically laughing at Australia and crying with Australia. But otherwise, we just started vaccinating 5-year-olds last week. So that's been really terrible. Of course, we can't save everyone, but we're doing our best. There are people letterbox dropping all over the country. People are going to schools to chat to parents before they go to school. They're going to playgrounds and chatting to parents, being respectful and being kind about it, not judgmental. And I would say hundreds of thousands of flyers are going out almost every day. So I know, because we get complaints to our phone number, which I'm happy to take because it means people are getting them. So that's pretty devastating, obviously. Now, the mandatory vaccination side of things with workplaces is it's terrible. I know families that are living in cars at the moment, but they've never been happier because they've stood up for themselves. I also know families that have moved in together to cut costs. People have just cut down their living expenses, and they're happy to not go to cafes and shopping because they would rather have their bodily integrity intact. However, a lot of people who disagree with the vaccination have also gotten it because they felt there was no other option. And I don't judge them either. But it's really hard to see people you know and love having to struggle with that decision. Do I put food on the table, or do I get a vaccination that I'm scared of? So it's really hard to see. And the booster shot, so the third shot, has just been, made mandatory in my state, in Victoria. So all those people that took 2 jabs they didn't want are now going to be considered unvaccinated unless they take the 3rd jab. And to me, it seems like Australia just ordered a lot of shots and they want to get rid of them before the new vaccination comes, because they keep saying that this one isn't going to be good enough for Omicron anyway. So, and just one more thing on what's happening in Australia. It's so insane that, okay, I want to get this right. So vaccinated nurses who have COVID or test positive for COVID are able to go to work because they're so understaffed, but unvaccinated nurses who don't have COVID cannot go to work because there is an absolute shortage in nurses. Our emergency services are all behind. I know people who have called the police and the ambulance and they just haven't come. So there's a few reasons for that. I think the adverse reactions are adding to that, but also they've had to fire thousands and thousands of nurses because they didn't get the COVID jab. So that's pretty much the highlights. And just one more thing is, of course, the quarantine facilities. You probably wanted to talk about that anyway. In Northern Territories, there is one operational at the moment. And if you basically in Australia, for your audience who don't know, people have been checking in with their phone for over a year now. So everywhere they go, they scan the QR code and they check in. Now, if you've been found to be a close contact with someone who tests positive for COVID, you will get a call. And if you're in the Northern Territories, you could be forced to go to one of these quarantine facilities. And if you don't go, you'll get a $5,000 fine. And the average wage is about $3,500 a month. So it's a lot of money. And then if you go to the quarantine facility and if you get caught opening your door without a mask on, you'll get a $5,000 fine or a warning first. And then when you go home, you get a bill for over $4,000 for going to the quarantine facility. So they're actually asking people to pay for involuntary imprisonment, basically. So it's insane.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. And these scams are really interesting to talk about because we hear about that and we can hardly imagine that there are sort of hotels when you travel between states. But it seems like also the rumors are that unvaccinated people might go there for maybe longer than a week.
Well,
You
you see, a year ago, I didn't think mandatory vaccinations could be possible. And I also didn't think that myself, a law-abiding, tax-paying, good citizen of this country, would be put in prison. So it really does not at all faze me to say that these camps are definitely designed for people like me. There isn't enough unvaccinated people, according to their statistics, to even fill up one of these places. And they're building 2 more, and they're really big, okay? And I know for sure that the Victorian one is going to be staffed by prison guards. So I don't know about you, but a fence around you, staffed by prison guards and threatened to go there, it's a prison. And the thing is that the public sentiment against the unvaccinated is getting pretty dangerous. The media obviously make us out to be diseased spreaders. And I know in Germany, they've used that term before. And so if you can convince people, the average person, that the unvaccinated are dirty and they're holding you back from living your life, I'm pretty sure there'd be a decent percentage of people right now who would have no problems with someone like me being dragged from their house in the dead of night and forced into a quarantine facility, because it would be for the health and well-being of the entire population, right? And on top of that, in Victoria, there was a new bill put in last year called the Pandemic Management Bill. Your audience might have heard about it. We had the biggest protest in Australian history 2 weeks in a row. We kept beating the records, and over 10% of the entire Victorian population was on the streets. All the law officials, the big law bodies, legal bodies, were all against it. Everyone was against it. Even the mainstream media were actually putting questions out there about it. It still went ahead. Yeah. So it goes to show you that they don't care what the people think. But this bill basically says that the Premier, Daniel Andrews, who I'm sure your audience has heard of, he's quite infamous at the moment, he can basically make an order for any group or any person to have to be forced into quarantine and even forced vaccinated. It did have in the first draft of the bill. So it's pretty uncomfortable times.
Yeah. And scary times too. Behind you, there is a photo of Melbourne, and there is also a logo of your organization, Reignite Democracy Australia. You are the founder of this organization. What are your goals with this initiative?
Well, it's when I started it, I had no goals, and still every day new things come up and new goals become evident. I had obviously had no idea 2 years ago that I would be sitting here with someone from Holland who wanted to talk to me about my prison experience. It's really quite insane. I prayed a lot for purpose in my life, and I was single for most of my life as well. And in 1 year, I found purpose, a man, and a lot more. So they say, be careful what you pray for. But anyway, here we are. Look, I've never been happier, but I've also never worked as hard. But the purpose right now is the federal election is coming up in about 3 months. It hasn't been called yet, but we have a new party, not a new party, but a reinvigorated party called United Australia Party. They have unlimited financial resources. They are putting candidates in every single electorate in the country. They've already started campaigning just last week. My fiance is running for a seat with this party, and it's a really big beacon of hope for Australia. And the only issue is if nothing changes at the federal election, then I'm going to be quite concerned for the future of this country, because there is this very unique opportunity right now for a protest vote, a revolutionary vote, where the major parties who have been in control for the last 70 years in this country might actually be shaken up. And if that happens, it would make history. And now is the opportunity. So Reignite Democracy Australia is working with a few political parties to try and bring about some serious change. And this has actually been really what I've been gearing up to for a long time. This is important. We cannot change anything unless we change it from the top, is one of my opinions.
Yeah. Well, it's for my audience, it's really interesting to have a look at her website, because it's a really informative and really nice website to look at, Reignite Democracy Australia. For the last question, Monica, I'm really interested because what we do with demonstrations and rallies, and we do it here as well, is fighting the system. And the system, well, we say it's not a good system, actually. We need to break it down and rebuild it again. What do you think about? Because a lot of people might think that if this whole strange world stops tomorrow, that we can go back to our old life, to our old normal. For me personally, I think we need to build a new world and with new values. What are your ideas about this, building a new world, or you're fighting the system?
Well, nothing will ever be the same again in our lifetimes anyway. And of course, we'll talk about this with our children and grandchildren in the future, and they'll be sick of it. But the reason we're in this position is because there was this false idea of freedom since I was born. And even my father didn't have to experience much pain in his life here in Australia. It's been really a great life. I've got to be honest. We have all the opportunities we need, all the food, all the career, everything. It's great here in this country and other places in the world. And that is why this happened. While we were enjoying life and living with our family and friends, they were planning this the entire time. So I know that my generation and your generation will never go back to the way things were, because we will always be involved in politics in one way or another, even if that is just researching properly who you want to vote for. I didn't even vote for the first two elections when I was over 18. And after that, I just voted for whoever my dad voted for. And I never read anything about anything. And I'm the reason we're in this position, because of people like me just living their lives and thinking that the government didn't affect them. I honestly thought that it wouldn't matter who I voted for, as long as I can work and pay my bills. I don't really care. But that is the sentiment that has brought us to this position. Our culture has been absolutely rubbished over the last few decades with pop culture and things like that. And we've become so selfish, and all we care about, especially in this country, I feel like all we care about is our own little block of land. As long as my grass is mowed and I've got my job, everything's fine. That all has to change. We need to start working as communities again. In Australia, a lot of people don't even know their neighbours, so that needs to change. And I think, though, there is this awkward moment where we have to play the evil system in order to change it, I think. And what I mean by that is not making bad decisions. I just mean that, we need to get into their corrupt system and change it from the inside. That's my opinion. I know a lot of people are trying to work outside of the system to make a change, but I've so far found those tasks to be futile. My analogy is, and I'll just say this quickly, is you can't win a basketball game playing football rules. You have to first play the basketball game to win, and then you can maybe change the rules later. That's my analogy. I don't want to go back to the way it was, because I was ignorant and I was unaware and I was in a bubble. And although it was fun, I was totally unaware and oblivious to what's going around me. And you can never go back. You can never unsee what you've seen or unknow the things that you now know. But isn't it better to be informed and know what you're going into? So I would never go back, and I don't think any of us should. So I agree with you, is my short answer.
Yeah. For your campaign, I read it, Together We Can campaign, and we want the same, our freedom back. What would you say to people who have doubts about what's going on? I know a lot of people in Australia still think that what is happening is just normal and it's okay. And we say, as freedom fighters, it's not okay. We want our freedom back. What kind of inspiring words do you have for us?
Oh, that's a great question, because I have a perfect answer for that. I watched this video with Dr. Demesti, sorry, Dameetti, or something like that. Maybe you can find it and put it in the comments, but it's about mass formation. And it basically explains that the people that we're trying to shake to wake up, we're like, how can you not see this? And it's very aggravating for people like us, especially family and friends. I don't have that problem. Everyone I know agrees with me, but some people have a really hard time. what they said is, imagine this, over 60% of Americans say that they don't even have one meaningful relationship. And over 65% of Americans say that their jobs are meaningless. Okay. So what the real problem here is that people have lost purpose in their life and meaning, and they're searching for that. And they have found it within the COVID pandemic. Okay. Because when they wear a mask and they walk around and they see everyone else wearing masks, they feel finally a part of something. And they feel like their very beingness is actually contributing to saving lives. So they leave the house and they're smiling under their mask because they feel finally important. And that actually, and because of that strong, it's kind of, I would say it's like a trance. That's not a very good term, but I think it's like a trance that no matter what you say to these people, they believe all of it. They believe all the stuff on the TV, and it doesn't matter what you say. So I would say have patience with them, because there will come a time where the pain comes to their doorstep and they will have to see, but they're going to have to see it on their own. After 2 years of this, if they haven't woken up yet, it's going to take something pretty major. And so my suggestion would be be patient. They will come around one day, and they will find out, they will realize that people like you and I are actually fighting for them as well. And when they realize that when that day comes, we want to have been kind and patient and empathetic with these people so that we can then be a community again, and we will be. So that would be my suggestion.
Thank you so much, Monica, for talking to us. I wish you all the best, and keep up the good work.
Well, thank you. And I have a look at, I see all the footage from the Netherlands, and it makes me really happy. And I have been there once as well. So I feel really connected to Amsterdam. I went to Amsterdam when I was about 18. So thank you for fighting for all of our rights as well.
Ja. Dankjewel voor het kijken weer naar een interview van Zebra Inspiratie. Dit keer met Monica Smit uit Australië. En wat een verhaal weer daar vandaan. Bedankt voor het kijken. Vind je dit een gave video? Dan zou ik het fijn vinden dat je hem liked en dat je hem deelt op social media. Want wat Monica ook zegt, we kunnen het woord niet vaak genoeg verspreiden om mensen te laten informeren wat er gebeurt in de wereld. Tot de volgende keer. Dankjewel.